When most people think of history, they think of abstract names and dates that their teachers made them memorize in class. Random facts that are dry, dusty, and dead. But for some of us, history is far more personal. People from our past and the events they were involved in become part of our present, something we live with every day. We know that history isn't dead. If we look closely and listen carefully, we realize history never dies. History is alive.
When someone says haunted house, what do you think of? A large old mansion at the end of a lonely country road, behind an iron fence, filled with mysteries, relics, scandals, and ghosts? Well, we've come to the right place. Whitehall State Historic House, located just north of Richmond, Kentucky. Once home to 19th century emancipationist Cassius Marcellus Clay, the house boasts an incredible history and is rumored to be filled to the rafters with paranormal activity. If you've never been to Whitehall, you're in for a real experience. Oh, and don't assume that there's just one spirit lurking in the shadows. Others may be standing right behind you. A shotgun blast shatters a peaceful November afternoon in Madison County, Kentucky. A brief but lively exchange of small arms fire follows. Some folks have said that they heard the thundering report of a cannon. When silence returns to the rolling bluegrass hills, the locals just shrug their shoulders and say, "Well, the old lion of Whitehall is roaring again. I wonder what that crazy old man is up to now." Cassius Marcellus Clay, the Lion of Whitehall, or the crazy old man, depending on your opinion, was a study in contrasts. Born into a wealthy slave-owning family in 1810, he's recognized as one of America's best-known emancipationists, working to end slavery. Cassius's father, Green Clay, was ironically the largest slave owner in Kentucky, having more than 100 slaves. Dr. Burley Clay, a retired professor of anthropology, is a direct descendant of Green Clay. His academic background and extensive knowledge of family lore make him uniquely qualified to place Whitehall and the Clay family in their historical context.
Green Clay is my great-great-grandfather. He was a frontier entrepreneur, and he also speculated tremendously in land. Green's almost a mythic character in Kentucky history. He's almost viewed as a trickster by some.
Green Clay, his father, owned most of Madison County, so the family was Madison County. They bought this area, they settled this area.
At an early age, Cassius witnessed the evils of slavery. Mary, a woman enslaved by Cassius's father, killed an overseer in self-defense. She was found guilty of murder and sentenced to hang. Green went to the governor, who commuted Mary's sentence. However, when Green died in 1828, his will stated that Mary was to be sold down south. Cassius wrote in his memoirs that the sight of his older brother Sidney and Mary, both in tears as she was led away in chains to be sold, convinced him to give slavery a death struggle.
He is remembered in the context of his emancipationism, and how he got there in a family that was slave owners is interesting to consider.
Cassius, as an emancipationist, had a plan that would free the slaves gradually over time through legal means. He wanted to change the law in order to free the slaves rather than just do it, chaotically, I guess.
Cassius freed his slaves in 1844.
Cassius is one of those founding people of the Republican Party. He was a contender at the convention in 1860 when Lincoln got the ticket. So he had that national exposure.
Cassius Clay was a very important person in today's history. He fought for things that other people were afraid to stand up against. He often voiced his opinion and stood up for what he believed in. And I think that's something that's extremely important. We need a lot more people like Cassius Clay. It's 2018 and here he is still making a difference in someone else's life.
While Cassius considered himself a peaceful man, he fought to defend his right to free speech and did so with a variety of weapons: the Bowie knife, pistols, and even 2 small brass cannon he purchased to defend his anti-slavery newspaper.
He was not just a talking head, he was also very vociferous in his convictions, which led to several altercations, including some killings, not murder, but he was defending himself. If you didn't agree with him, you might want to step away.
A man named Sam Brown shot Clay with a pistol at point-blank range during a political event. Clay responded by cutting off Brown's ear, gouging out an eye, and cleaving his skull to the brain. After the fracas, it was discovered that Brown's pistol ball had been stopped by the sheath of Cassius's Bowie knife directly above his heart.
Cassius, flamboyant Cassius, has become a local legend thanks to some historians in the 1930s.
Cassius's legacy runs deeper than ending slavery. He helped to form the Republican Party, campaigned for Abraham Lincoln, and received an appointment to be ambassador to Russia. As a Southern aristocrat, he fit in well at the Russian court. During his 7-year term, he cultivated an effective and successful working relationship with Tsar Alexander II and Prime Minister Gorchakov, which culminated in the United States purchase of Alaska. While Cassius was in Russia, his wife Mary Jane handled all of the business affairs of his 2,000-acre estate and converted the original 7-room home called Claremont to a 10-bedroom, 10,000-square-foot mansion, which is now known as Whitehall. The amenities included central heating and indoor plumbing, highly unusual features in a home built in the 1860s. The cost? A shocking $30,000.
She's devoted so much time and so much energy to building this house the way that she wanted it to, in the middle of the Civil War, no less. And then, it was never really completely finished when she was done with it. The house itself is incredible. It's two houses. It's put together interestingly, but it's extremely impressive. I mean, the first thing when people walk into the door, you get that wow. And I still feel that when I walk around the house, and I come in here every single day.
It was overbuilt, ostentatious. I don't think it was ever completely finished or furnished in Cassius's time because he had marital problems.
When Cassius returned from his appointment in Russia in 1869, his personal life was peppered with scandals.
The Clays themselves had a lot of upheaval in their lives. He and Mary Jane had pretty big marital problems. They had children that passed away. So there's a lot of unfinished maybe business, I guess, here, especially when you think about Mary Jane.
Rumors of Cassius's infidelity while in Russia soured his marriage. Mary Jane banished her husband to a third-floor, unheated bedroom he called the cold room. In 1872, Cassius and his wife had the only fight of their entire marriage. She left and moved to Lexington.
Well, they were very passionate people as well. I mean, when they argued. It wasn't, Mary and Cassius divorced after 44 years of marriage, which was unheard of back then. So you can imagine that the arguments they had were probably pretty intense too.
Shortly after, Cassius adopted a 6-year-old Russian boy who he renamed Lonnie. Cassius stated he knew the identity of the child's parents, but would take that secret with him to his grave. Mary Jane was much more than just the keeper of Whitehall and wife to Cassius. Along with her daughters, they were instrumental in achieving women's suffrage. One of the daughters, Laura, became the first woman nominated for president by the Democratic National Party. Cassius was inattentive to the everyday running of his household and estate. His hired servants, Sarah and David White, stole from him. When their thievery was exposed, Cassius gave them an hour to get off the property. The White's son, Perry, was engaged to Lonnie's nanny. In order to get revenge for his parents' dismissal, Perry and the nanny concocted a Byzantine plan to force Lonnie to kill himself and make Cassius believe the boy died by accident while trying to run away from home. They sat the boy on his bedroom windowsill and told him to jump or they would kill him. The next morning, Lonnie was found alive and well, hiding in a barn. He had nodded off to sleep and had fallen from the second-story window, but was miraculously unharmed. Perry and the nanny slipped away in all the confusion. Lonnie told his father what happened, and Cassius vowed to never allow Perry or the nanny near the boy again. He kept his word. Several days later, Cassius discovered Perry on the estate, hiding behind a tree. Perry went for his revolver, but Cassius shot first and killed him. A grand jury found that Cassius had acted in self-defense.
When we read history books and things and look back, they weren't perfect individuals by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly not some of the Clays, who have some very interesting stories.
Cassius's once jet-black hair was now a snowy white mane. When paired with his full beard, it's perfectly understandable how he received the sobriquet of the Lion of Whitehall. At age 84, Cassius married a second time. This time he chose Dora Richardson, a 15-year-old orphan girl. Madison Countyans were morally outraged. They believed the girl was being held against her will, so they organized a posse to rescue Dora. Cassius drove the posse off with pistols and a shotgun, but some local citizens still swear that he fired off his cannon as well. After one difficult year of marriage, Dora ran off, and Cassius divorced her soon after. After his second divorce, Cassius's mind and body began to fail. He became paranoid. Even family members had to approach Whitehall's front door with caution, never being sure whether they would be greeted with a handshake, a load of buckshot, or the roar of a cannon.
It's interesting to me as a measure of where this particular man, Cassius, sort of wound up thinking about himself and his place.
Cassius Clay's long and eventful life ended at 9 o'clock in the morning, July 22nd, 1903. He was 92 years old.
Once Cassius died, you had tenant farmers that rented this space out, and it was used as a barn and sat abandoned for a little while. So the house has undergone a lot of changes. There's been a lot of upheaval, I would say.
Whitehall was sold at auction to Cassius's grandson, who rented the now derelict mansion to tenant farmers for the next 60 years. They lived in the rear rooms of the old house and used the rest as a barn to store tobacco, hay bales, and feed bags. Hogs were kept in the basement. After many years of neglect, the family donated the house to the state of Kentucky. It was restored and opened as a museum in 1971.
It's easy to imagine that some of the strong personalities that were part of the chaotic past of Whitehall might still remain in the shadows. Is it possible then that an examination of the artifacts that the family left behind might reveal something about their actions?
Many original family artifacts have been returned to Whitehall. Being surrounded by the Clay's possessions makes history come alive for guests as they imagine the eventful lives of the former owners.
This is the role of artifacts. Archaeologists call it caring for culture's clutter. So artifacts are essential to contextualizing history, to building an understanding of what happened. And if you don't have the artifacts, you're getting a one-sided view of things.
Whenever I see an artifact that's documented to a particular time, particular action, such as Cassius Clay's knife he used in a fight, that really, it makes it real to me. I can see the action. I can see in this case Cassius fighting for his life and sinking this knife into this guy's hip.
As a guide here, I was here when many of the original Clay family items were brought in for the first time. And it was really a sensational feeling to get to touch, for example, his original Bowie knife, to actually see the pants that were worn by someone he got into a fight with and actually stabbed to death. And it really gives you a connection to the past like nothing else can. Even simply reading about something won't do it.
You know, when you're digging through old records, but also you can see and touch the furniture of the people, you know, that makes history come alive.
After doing so much research on Clay, reading so many letters by him and from his family members, reading so many long-forgotten newspaper articles about him, I really do feel that I have some kind of insight into his mind and the way that he thought.
It's like taking a coloring book and black and white. It's still a coloring book, but you put those colors in there, and then all of a sudden it comes to life.
When you're actually handling those items, it really becomes real and alive to you. It's not just black and white, pages on a textbook. It's real. It's tangible. I think that's what makes coming here and experiencing a house like this so important, because it really lets people see, this happened. This really happened. People really lived here. People use these items that we have here.
I got handed an artifact. It was a shower head that had come back to the mansion that came back after I left, and it was amazing because, I don't know, it made me cry. Being able to hold artifacts that had to do with the Clay family here was like making the history come back to life, like they were like the Clay family was kind of almost materializing in front of me.
What if the Clay family did materialize in front of our eyes? What would they say? What secrets would they reveal?
People who visit this palatial home often carefully examine the opulent furnishings to better understand the people who lived here. Others report, as they are carefully examining their surroundings, that someone or something is closely examining them right back. The lucky few, depending on your definition of lucky, report seeing or hearing the former residents, travelers from the past or the beyond, but always cloaked in shadows.
With as many rooms as it has, there's more than one, entity that's in this house. You can definitely feel it, no matter where you are in this house. It's the strangest feeling.
I was definitely being watched. I wasn't in the house by myself. It wasn't a sick feeling or a bad feeling. You just knew you weren't by yourself anymore.
Even when I was the first person that would walk in the house to go turn on all the lights, or the last person in the house to turn everything off, it always felt like you were surrounded by so many other people who had been here before you.
You walk into every room and you just know that things have happened here.
Tales of strange feelings and even stranger experiences have drawn the paranormal team to Whitehall.
You look where we're at, we're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And he's got this, 10,000 square foot house or whatever it is. Yeah. This thing is massive.
We've got to get to know a whole new family.
Yeah.
And they've got to get to know us too.
A public investigation of the mansion yielded so much activity, they have returned for an in-depth inspection.
I think they're wary of us because they don't know who we are, but I do think that they are eager and desperate even to get their stories out there and to show people that they still are there.
The team employs various forms of technology to assist them in their investigations. Jamie is the head technician for the team. It's his responsibility to ensure that all the equipment is ready for the first private investigation.
It's a little bit of a pressure sometimes because you're afraid you're going to miss something that could be vital to the investigation. Just being able to sit and listen to some of the audio or watch some of the video and capture things that I can present to these guys and say, hey, look at this, or you need to hear what this one says.
As Jamie finishes prepping for day one, David and the team inspect the mansion in hopes of discovering more about its rich history.
I like going into a place and not knowing the history of the place, getting the evidence and then learning the history of the place.
After exploring the somewhat disorienting layout of Whitehall, it became clear that the team sensed something very different about the stately home.
This house has a lot of energy. There's people that were in and out on a daily basis, hundreds of people. There are 105 slaves here, 15 house servants just to take care of the family within the house. Do you think that could be part of the energy we're feeling tonight?
Oh, absolutely. Like you said, over the generations, there's been so many people here. There's so much energy, both positive and negative, that all this activity, it's got to be sparking something up.
When we arrived at Whitehall, you could feel the heaviness in the air as soon as you walked in the house. You could tell that there was going to be a lot of activity, a lot of history had happened there.
There's so much that happened in that house throughout time that it's just piles of different personalities and activities in that house.
The energy can be connected to several other occurrences that guests and workers experienced.
The first real encounter I had was a voice. It was during one of our tours, and I was giving my monologue in the old warming kitchen, and I hear a voice that was not my own, and it was none of the people that was in the room. That was my first experience, and I was just kind of like, whoa, there's real history here.
We had been looking for places to get married We wanted to do an outdoor wedding in the fall, and I immediately thought of Whitehall because I knew it had beautiful grounds.
After the wedding was over and we were packing things up, we should let the staff know that they left their music on. When we let Lachey know that they'd left the music on the speakers, and she told me very matter-of-factly that they did not have speakers nor music.
Yeah, there was another day I was walking in through the hallway right here, and I glanced into this room, which was set up as a parlor at the time, and I saw a boy standing. I thought, oh, this is somebody who's escaped from a tour group with his parents, and I started into the room and I said hello, and he got a very surprised look on his face and quickly ducked behind the arm of the sofa, which sat right here. I could still see him, so I ducked down behind the other arm of the sofa and kind of kept my head out. I could see him. And then all of a sudden, he would stick his head out and look at me, and then we had both retract. This went on 3 or 4 times. And finally, I stood up and started walking towards him, and he just slowly vanished. Didn't walk anywhere, didn't run, just dissipated.
The time had come for the paranormal team to find out if these stories would come to life for them. Tony, Maddie, and Lee kick off their investigation in what they came to call the Creepy Doll Room.
EVP session number 1 with Lee, Tony, and Maddie were in the children's room. Were you moving things around in there? Is that the noise we heard?
Within minutes, Maddie receives a surprising response to her inquiries. They radio the rest of the team to join them to share their find.
Team 2 to Team 1, we're getting ready to review our EVP session in the children's bedroom, if you could join us.
Hey guys.
Hey, so we were doing an EVP session. We heard some noises behind us. We think we might have picked something up, so we wanted you all to be in here with us to check it out.
Okay, let's check it out. Sweet.
That's somebody there?
Somebody there.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pretty awesome.
So whoever was behind us or making those sounds, I mean, it had to be them.
Sounds like a lady.
Yeah.
Somebody there.
Yeah.
Great catch.
That's class A, man.
And if you listen before it, there's a lot of like knocking noises. Yeah.
And we didn't really hear that except for when we initially heard it behind us.
Can I hear that one more time? I mean, that's Class A EVP right there. That's amazing.
Yes.
That's a great EVP. That's a great EVP. And, you know, is someone there? It's almost like, you know, they're hearing us.
Yeah, they were hearing us, want to know what's going on.
Not necessarily just, you know, answering questions. It's almost like they're doing their own thing.
And we made the noise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, is somebody there?
Who's investigating who?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a great catch, guys.
When we get something like a question asked us, there's someone there, and it almost feels like maybe they're looking for us like we're looking for them.
As the team revels in the Class A EVP, the technicians add to the growing body of evidence.
The guys at Tech heard humming or singing from down the hallway.
Based on the quality and quantity of activity uncovered by the team on the first investigation, Jamie decides to leave a recording device on in the Creepy Doll Room overnight. After reviewing the audio files, he was shocked to find over 50 distinct examples of residual noises and voices, including high-pitched whistling or singing was also captured.
What's really cool is we were talking to Jeffrey earlier about, some stuff that took place maybe in the library, and he was telling us about some letters that Cassius had sent home, and that he said, "Kiss my little songbird for me."
The paranormal team isn't the first to sense the existence of former inhabitants. Past employees shared similar stories.
As curator, I was often alone in the house, especially in the winter when the house was closed. And I can remember sometimes praying as I made that loop, because I would often hear babies crying, and I knew I was the only person in the house. A lot of times on the second floor, I would hear large pieces of furniture, or what I thought was furniture that was moving.
So some of the things that I would hear throughout the time that I spent here, always in the kids' room, there was always something going on, lots of noises, like a lot of laughter. Sometimes I would hear crying, but nothing that was ever malevolent. Unfortunately, in those times, you had a lot of kids that lived and died at a very young age, and that those kids still feel like they're home here and always made themselves known.
Because so many people have related stories that involve children, the team elects to make their way to the children's room, located in the old part of the house, built in 1798. But on their way up the steps, the tech crew reports abnormal activity.
And we also have heard several things down the hallway here. Then the REM pod went off.
Yeah, the REM pod is basically it's a device that measures not only temperature fluctuation, but also it's a proximity sensor. So if anything gets within a certain distance from it, we'll set it off and trigger that. And so we've had a lot of activity with both the temperature fluctuation and proximity. So something was interacting with it intelligently.
We could hear some children playing down the hallway as the REM pod was going off.
Before David could reach the children's room, the REM pod registered frantic activity.
There you go, you're making it go off. Awesome, thank you. I was coming up to actually change batteries. I heard this thing just going crazy.
Yeah, I could hear from third floor.
Yeah, so, and the interesting thing is I was asking it if it could, it's got different colored lights on it.
Yeah.
Is I would ask it, can you light up the green one? And it would light up the green one. Can you light up the purple one? And it would light up the purple one.
You can't get much more of an intelligent response than that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
David asked Maddie and Lee to join his investigation before entering the children's room.
I don't even know at this point. Can you make that light up green again for me? There it went. Thank you. Tell us your name. Oh, okay, so that was either a female or a child.
Over the course of the evening, Maddie and Lee seem to have developed a rapport with the house's entities. They take the lead in an EVP session in the children's room. They hope to make sense of the confusion and high energy present in the hallway.
Was it one of the children? Was it a mother? Was it a caretaker? We don't really know. We really didn't get any definitive answers on that. So maybe we can do an EVP session in here in the children's room, see if we can find out a little more.
Absolutely.
Earlier, you also were playing with one of our toys that we had sitting in the hallway. It makes some funny noises and it lights up. And we brought that in here with us and we set it on the bed. So could you come up and touch that for us again? I don't really feel anything in here, to be honest.
Nothing definitive was discovered in the EVP session, but it's possible that because the hallway linked the master bedroom, the children's room, and the nursery, that the energy might move freely and quickly from room to room. Over the years, many people have reported feeling that frenetic energy.
Just different things throughout the house. We had disembodied voices, noises that we were hearing when there weren't people around.
I felt a presence in the room. It was very unsettling, and I stood up, and this rush of energy came for me, straight to me at such a level that I was terrified, and it stopped right in front of me, and then it walked through my body. And I know that sounds crazy, but it was the most terrifying sense, knowing that I was here in this house.
The sheer number of personalities of people who've lived here over the years definitely seems to have an effect on the house.
Based on a variety of activity on the 3rd floor, David and Damon head up to the Blue Room and experience one of the wildest moments in all their years of investigating the paranormal.
Tony and Jamie watching the cameras.
Yeah.
And we're seeing not just orbs in here, but movement.
Movement, and there was a couple of light flickers.
A couple of light flickers. So thought we'd come up here real quick and do another quick EVP session and see if we could get anything.
Yeah.
As the EVP session progressed, it appeared that someone broke the film crew's silence protocol.
Were you a farmer here?
The session was ended to determine if the voice calling out David was an EVP. Because the voice was so clear and distinct, it was initially decided that a team member was responsible. To preserve the integrity of the investigation, the director, Darren, gathered the team and crew together to discover the guilty party.
I can account for every member of LPRS. Everyone was outside, so you're talking 3 floors down, all the way outside. Like we've talked about, the walls in this house, 24 inches thick of brick, man. So you couldn't hear us.
From a production standpoint, we all assumed, our team thought it was somebody on your team messing with us.
It was late, and the tech crew had mountains of evidence to sift through. It was readily apparent that a follow-up investigation was needed. Many questions still remained, not the least of which were, who was David? Who called for him? Why was he needed? The answers to those questions and others had yet to emerge from the shadows. After an overwhelmingly successful and active night of investigations, the team returns to Whitehall for round 2. David and Damon have decided that their first order of business should be to determine the validity of the David EVP. Coordinating with the tech team, they have devised an experiment.
During one of the investigations, we were doing an EVP session on the 3rd floor. In the middle of recording, we heard someone say, it was David Underwood and myself, we heard someone say, Dave, like they were questioning, are you up there? Looking for David. And we all kind of got upset because he was messing up our recording. In fact, on our recording, you can actually hear one of the crew members, tell someone to shh. And come to find out, there was no one else in the house. Everyone else was already outside.
1 week ago, this room, we caught a great.
Either the grandmother of all Class A EVPs or
contamination. So I have to know.
Yeah.
So I've got Jamie set up on the staircase, and I'm going to move him at varying levels down the hallway and have him say David and see if we can pick that up. Of course, we know we're going to pick it up on the recorder.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to run it through our program and compare it frequency level, compare it to where the original is.
Because the original was several hertz below yours.
Yeah. Mine is at 10, this is at 0.5. So I want to see it at 0.5, whatever the,
whatever
the scale
level actually is.
As Maddie and Lee look on, Jamie sets up the audio equipment needed for the test.
Do 2 to 3 Davids per level at different voice levels. the conversation level we're having, then a normal conversation level, and then maybe a little lower. Sure. Just see how they all three play out.
Top of the steps. David. 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 All right, moving down to the next level.
It was not that.
David. David. David.
Immediately after the conclusion of the experiment, Jamie compares tonight's recording with the David EVP.
Okay, so there's the whistle, and then there's David. All right.
So we recreated that just now.
I mean, you can look at the hertz and tell the difference. It's not close.
So who is David? How does he fit into the history of the house?
Evidence will show there was no way that was a living voice.
So what were you able to find out about David?
David appears in the Green Clay's will and was given to one of Cassius's sisters. He was an African American who was held in bondage. He was a slave. So it might have been then Green Clay calling out for David to come and help him.
It's kind of what it sounded like.
I can tell you by the evidence from going from the original EVP to what we recreated tonight, you can tell by the sound waves and the frequencies and the tones, it's not the same voice. I mean, it's not none of us.
What I like about it is that we were able to capture something when we weren't really looking for that. It just presented itself. And then through Chris and Jeffrey, we were able to find that name Dave, in Whitehall's records. And so we do know that there was an enslaved person there and he was named David. I love the way it ties together. Now where we go from here is we caught a nice EVP. We found a little bit about the history of David. So we need to keep pursuing that and see what else we can come up with tonight.
Disembodied voices, shadows lurking in the hallways and darting out of sight. As the evidence mounts up, nearly every occurrence can be traced back to history. What the team has experienced is reinforced by many other eyewitness accounts.
I like to tell people that you can count the paranormal experiences I've had on one hand. And this is coming from a guy that's been associated with this place for a number of years. I'm giving a tour on the second floor to a couple, and I look up on the third floor and I see a female image, and I'm fixated. And I watch as that image slowly walks out of my frame of sight. Immediately freaked out. As fast as I can, I run to the third floor. I look around, no one is there. But I know I saw a female wearing period clothing.
So I was by myself upstairs. It was a fairly calm morning, and I was getting my dress on, and I remember looking at it and thinking how beautiful it was and how it was very, I guess, cool to feel like I was putting on something that someone 100 years ago would have been doing in the very same room. But I put it on, and as I was pressing down the blouse over my left ear, I heard pretty, very pretty.
My favorite story is of the tenement wife in the 1930s who lived here, who saw Cassius Clay in the middle of the night one night, and he asked her why she was sleeping on the floor instead of in one of the beds that were upstairs. And it's, as I say that, I get chills. But they embodied so much love for other people and care for other people that I think we can still learn from that to this day.
My son would routinely see what he called as shadow people. He's 2 years old at the time, and he would talk about the shadow people being inside our house. One day he looked out the kitchen window and said, "Look, Daddy, Santa Claus." And there's no one outside, of course, but I thought about Cassius Marcellus Clay in his older years and what he looked like as an old man. You know, gray hair, gray beard. And I thought, you know, my kid is seeing something. What is he seeing?
Maddie and Lee take their investigation to the basement. Almost immediately, the EMF detector indicates contact.
All right, so you just made this this device in my hand light up. Can you do that for me again? Oh.
Whatever is communicating with Maddie and Lee seems to move freely throughout the cavernous basement. Their next stop is the jail cell.
The feeling is in this room, and it's in the whole basement. I noticed it when we came downstairs. It feels exactly like it did when you and I were here before, and it was just us down here. I'm hoping that some of our friends from last time will definitely come back and make an appearance, because we know there are so many voices that tried to come through to us.
And maybe we can try to find out who that shadow person was and why they presented themselves in the way that they did.
So we know when we were down here before, there were quite a few of you that wanted to come forward and talk to us, and we have some names. So Simon, are you here? Jack, are you here? If there's anyone we didn't name, please come forward and tell us your name. Whoa, okay. That definitely needs to be played by.
Yeah.
If there's anyone we didn't name, please come forward and tell us your name. It's not a name. It's, I don't want to say a cry, more like a gasp.
During the public investigation held several days prior, something showed distinct antipathy toward Damon. Maddie and Lee joined Damon in Laura's room to conduct a Frank's Box session to discover who is angry with Damon and why.
Laura, I know this was your room for a period of time. Are you here with us? I understand you are also a relatively powerful lady, ran for state senate, and was actually nominated for president. Is that correct? Anybody else just see the lights flicker? Lightning.
Storm.
Yes.
Serious?
How are we having a thunderstorm in November?
That's awesome.
Almost December.
Yeah.
Miss Laura, we got an EVP in here once with a female voice. Was that you speaking to Damon?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you not want me in this room? More thunder.
So there's a great deal of energy in the air now because we're having a thunderstorm. So you should be able to use that to power yourself.
The session confirmed a ghostly grudge, but not the cause. The team is beginning to suspect the seemingly chaotic actions and responses of the entities may actually have a purpose. The investigators regroup in the creepy doll room, where it first appeared that the spirits became aware of the team's presence in order to test a theory.
All right, we know for a fact that we've been getting residual EVPs in this room every night that we've left a recorder in it. We know that we caught it the first time when we were doing an EVP session up here with Tony. So we've got all four of us together now. Let's try a Frank's Box session in here, see what'll happen. I mean, it's worth a shot.
Was this your room? Every time you go to say there's nothing here, we get something.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's almost like it doesn't want to talk to us, but it also doesn't want us to leave.
Their suspicions are confirmed. The entities appear to be observing the team while leading them on a wild goose chase.
Let's look at it from their point of view. We've got, all these strangers in their house. They don't know us from Adam. Are they dark, or are they just being protective of what's theirs?
I mean, what are you going to do if somebody comes in your house in the middle of the night? You know,
So we kind of got to look at things from
probably
their
going to
perspective.
react closer to Cassius. You know, the other day, we went into Laura's room, tried to do EVP session stuff, and there was nothing. It was dead. And then you go in there today, and it's heavy.
It's just like the kids running from room to room. We go in to do an EVP session or a Frank's Box session in one room where we've just heard a noise. Well, we turn around and the REM pod's going off in the opposite room now.
It's not one spirit here. It's, it's many.
The team was astonished by the number of different manifestations they encountered. This variety of spirits is confirmed by encounters experienced by others.
One night I was in a bedroom in my apartment on the park, and it was around 2 in the morning. I was praying, and I looked at the doorway that was right there in my son's room, and there was a light shining on it, and this black figure with like tatters at the end of it, like a long black cloak, flew across the door and on into his closet. And I literally jumped up straight up in the bed. I was standing in the bed and then jumped off the bed into the doorway and stared in at his bedroom before. And then I got so scared I went and got my daughter, and we all slept in the same bed that night. But my son would close his bedroom door, and I would ask him why he did that, and he would tell me, I don't want to see what's in there.
When you think about it, because we strive so hard as investigators to try to validate what's going on or what we can perceive as being paranormal, and to think that possibly the way that we perceive them, like shadow figures, they may actually be seeing us in the same manner.
I think there are a variety of spirits that still remain here for a variety of reasons. I know when I had some experiences that happened in the children's room, and I almost felt like that maybe they were children, you know, they were kind of pranks that were being played.
They're observing us, they're watching, and they're waiting to see what we do and how we interact with them. And I think they get comfortable in a zone like that just like we do, and they're more open to it. They are trying to let us know they're there, and they want us to know they're there.
Over 3 nights, the team amassed a staggering amount of evidence and conducted investigations in every area of the 44-room mansion. We have only been able to show you a small fraction of the team's findings. The team gathers one final time to review the most eventful investigation to date.
So guys, the last place we did, Waveland, we were able to narrow it down to 1 or 2 individuals that we were communicating with. Then we come to Whitehall, and let's look at Whitehall 150 years ago. It was a chaotic household, just a hotbed of activity. Fast forward to today, we're doing our investigation and we're picking up all of that chaos.
I think hotbed of activity is the best way to describe that house. You know, like we said earlier, you can't pin down a single room, single area of the house where all the activity resides day in and day out. It moves from room to room, section of the house to section of the house. So, I mean, I agree, hotbed of activity, the best way to describe it.
So Chris, for me to say that that household would have been chaotic during Cassius's time, is that a fair assessment?
It is. Whereas Waveland was, in the grand scheme of history, is barely a blip. Cassius was a watershed individual. In his time, he made a lot of waves, and I think a lot of those waves are still reverberating to us today.
Only 2 questions remain to be answered. What was concealed in the shadows of Whitehall, and what was history trying to tell us?
I guess we validated the connection between what we know happened there historically and the activity that's there now in a paranormal sense.
The energy and things that's flowing through the house, we were able to witness some of that energy being released and make itself known to us.
Grand Central Station. It was just a hotbed of activity every night we were there.
I think the house is alive and active because I believe the story here is not finished being told.
That family, I feel, is still going about their day-to-day life. When we get recordings and experiences in that house, it's like you're having a conversation with someone. They're not just answering a question here or there, they're actually asking us questions.
History is not just alive in the artifacts and the stories that you tell about this place. It's not just alive with paranormal investigations, but it's also alive for the people who work in sites like this because it becomes a part of their history.
Sometimes, what a family leaves behind is just a simple story. Perhaps it's unfinished business, a traumatic event, or regret from the road not taken. We've learned at Whitehall that complex individuals may leave behind disjointed repetitions of everyday life. They may even display a cautious willingness to communicate, but only on their terms. History speaks loudest through tales that are passed down from generation to generation. But more often than not, it whispers quietly from the shadows, waiting patiently to be discovered. So, is history alive? I believe it's constantly calling out to us, and we can hear it if we only take the time to stop and listen.